What makes a top 1% Amazon advertiser? That's what I'm going to be answering in this video. I've audited hundreds of accounts at this point, and the top 1% of sellers or advertisers all have these three common traits. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. So the three traits are these: tracking, consistency, and a clear strategy. So in regards to tracking, they have a clear system for tracking their data. With the consistency aspect, everything that they do in relation to their advertising, they are consistent with. So they will do things on a very regular cadence. And the final thing is they have a clear strategy. So they know exactly what they need to do, and they will ruthlessly focus on that. So we'll dive into each one in greater detail now. So the first common trait is every one of the top 1% sellers or advertisers that I have met, they have a clear system for tracking their data. Peter Drucker once said, "What can be measured can be improved," and I really do live with that mantra. I personally think that if you are tracking a particular metric and a change in that metric doesn't change your behaviour, then there is no point in tracking that metric. It's futile. So for example, if I'm tracking my click-through rate on a month-over-month basis and my click-through rate suddenly drops off a cliff, and that doesn't cause me to do certain things, then why am I even tracking that click-through rate? I should be looking at things like, has new competition entered the market? Has something in my star rating or reviews changed? Maybe I've gone from 4.5 stars to 4 stars. Or have my placements changed? So has the bidding for particular keywords become more competitive? And now my paid placements are showing at rest of search. All of these things you need to be aware of, so you know that if a particular metric changes, you can quickly identify the few things that may have moved that or influenced that. So the first point that I want to make here is track the most important metrics. The second point that I want to make here is you want to make sure that you're tracking on a product level. So there are various ways that you can do this, but the easiest way, in my opinion, is by segmenting your campaigns by portfolio. We're going to put here, track on a product level. Okay, now the reason that we do this is because you want to have a more granular idea of what's performing well and what's not performing. So for example, you may have one product in your catalogue that is seriously underperforming, but it has a large spend allocation of your advertising budget. This is something that you want to be immediately aware of, because you either want to reduce the spend on that particular product or identify what is actually causing the wasted spend. Now, on the flip side, you may have some products that are underutilized, meaning you have very low spend on them, but they have very good performance. So you may want to reallocate some of that spend to those performing products. I speak with dozens of sellers every week, and a lot of them aren't tracking the metrics on a product level. Now just imagine being the CMO of a huge company like, let's say, Coca-Cola, for example, and the executive team are in a meeting and the CEO asks the CMO, "How are our 330 milliliter cans doing?" And the CMO says, "I don't really know. I mean, we know how things are performing on an account level. So we know that overall our ROAS is, I don't know, let's say 2x on our direct response marketing. But I'll have to get back to you on the data for specifically for the cans." That CMO would get fired on the spot. So if all of the big companies are tracking things on a product level, then why are you as a seller not? It doesn't make sense. And tracking things on a product level allows you to be a little bit more proactive. It's because you know how each product is performing. Now, in terms of the KPIs that you want to be tracking, there are three main ones in my opinion that you want to make sure that you're tracking. Now, of course, feel free to add any other metrics, but on a high level, these are the three that you want to make sure that you're tracking. So you've got your ACOS, your total ACOS, and your clicks. So track your KPIs. So these are the three metrics that I recommend that you make sure you're tracking on a product level. You want to be tracking your ACOS, you want to be tracking how that ad spend is influencing your total sales, and also clicks. Because ultimately, PPC is a game of how many clicks can we get onto our listing. It's a traffic game essentially. So you want to be turning those impressions, those eyeballs, into people of interest, people that actually click on your listing. So in my opinion, these are the three metrics that you want to be tracking. Now you can add more, but you want to make sure that you're tracking all three of these on a product level. So that's tracking. To summarize, you want to make sure you're tracking all of your most important metrics. You want to be tracking those metrics on a product level. And if you want a guide of which type of metrics you should be tracking, the three easiest ones are your ACOS, total ACOS, and your clicks. So the second trait that we're going to be looking at is consistency. So when Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, Apple had a serious cash flow problem and he needed to resolve that quickly. So one of the first things that Steve Jobs actually put in place was a weekly meeting with his executive team. So every Wednesday afternoon, they would get together and they would have a meeting. There wouldn't really be any agenda as such, but all of the exec team needed to be there, and it would be every single Wednesday afternoon. Steve Jobs understood the importance of having consistency. By creating this weekly cadence, he was enforcing discipline, accountability, and consistency. And this led to the invention of the iPod, which is arguably one of Apple's most successful products. It also reduces decision fatigue. If you know, for example, and I'll give you a personal example, every Wednesday afternoon, I like to do bid optimization. So I know that come hell or high water, I'm going to be optimizing bids on a Wednesday afternoon. I could be ill, I could be at a wedding. Doesn't really matter, I'm optimizing bids on a Wednesday afternoon. So I have a checklist of things that I need to do on a daily basis. So I have a new tab for each day. So I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on each tab, I have a set of tasks that I must complete by the end of the day. And once I've completed the task, I'll just check it off and I'll move on to the next task. And it makes it so much more simple for me to be able to manage things, especially for multiple accounts. Because as I say, it reduces the need to think about what I've got to do. So I can use that cognition to actually execute the tasks that need to be done. So it's important to have a regular cadence. So we're going to put, the second point is using checklists works really well because you get a little bit of a dopamine hit every time you check something off, and it just gives you motivation going into the next task. So where you can, I do recommend using checklists. So one thing that a mentor of mine taught me was we can't control the effect, we can't control the outputs, but one thing that we can control is the inputs. So we know if we carry out X, Y, Z, then there's a high likelihood that A or B will happen. So we know that as long as we are putting in the inputs on a regular basis, then there is a good chance that we will succeed and we'll get what we want. So you want to be focusing on these ruthlessly and you want to be consistent. And this is why consistency is such an important trait to have as an advertiser. So that's consistency. And now we're going to move on to the third and final one, and that is having a clear strategy. In my opinion, this is the most important one, strategy, because it doesn't matter if you have a clear tracking system and you're consistent. If you're working on the wrong things, then this is going to negate everything else. For example, if I was a merchant back in the day and I sold wool and I wanted to travel to France to sell my wool to the French people, I could use the North Star or the Polaris Star as a reference point, and that would guide me to France because I know that I can follow that and I can use that as a guide to get to wherever I want to be. But without that, I would get lost and have no idea where I'm going. And I could end up in Spain, Germany, North Africa. The point being, I might not even get to France. So what would that actually look like in reality? Now, the first thing that we need to do is set a goal. So that could be a revenue goal. It could be a click-through rate goal. It could be a conversion rate goal. It doesn't really matter. The first thing that you want to do is set a clear goal. So once you've set a goal, you want to look at it and take a step back and just ask yourself, is this actually a realistic goal? For example, if I'm doing 10K a month on Amazon and I set a goal that by next year I want to be hitting 2 million per month. Now, if I've got funding, then that actually may be realistic and I've got a pipeline of products that I'm going to release. But if not, there's a good chance it's probably very unrealistic. So the first thing that you want to ask yourself is this realistic? Then if you've established that it is a realistic goal, what you're going to do is reverse engineer the numbers to get there. So let's use the revenue example again. Let's say that I've set a revenue goal of $100,000 in a month and I'm currently at $80,000 of revenue per month. I would need to reverse engineer what the numbers look like to get there. So I'll draw that out right now. Okay, so let's say our goal is $100,000 in a month. So 100K here. We're currently at 80K. So that means that there's a discrepancy of $20,000 between this 100K and 80K. So we need to grow our sales by $20,000 in a month. So now let's say that we're going to do that through advertising. So we need to increase our advertising revenue by 20K because that's something that we have control over. I mean, we can really get into nuance and say there are ways that we can improve our organic sales, but let's just, for the sake of this example, keep it at 20k of additional revenue through PPC. So 20k PPC. Now we know that our ACOS at the moment, and I'm just going to use simple numbers for the sake of this, is 10%. So that means that 20,000 multiplied by our 10% ACOS gives us 2,000. So we need to spend an additional $2,000 per month to get to this goal. So now we can break it down on a day-by-day level. So 2,000 divided by 30 equals, let's say, around $65. So we've just taken this goal here and we've made it very simple by breaking it down to what we need to be spending additionally in terms of advertising spend. So we know that we need to spend an additional $65 per day. Now we can go one step further and say, okay, now we can look at, do we increase budgets for existing campaigns if we have the ability to? Now that's going to be very easy because we can just increase our budgets. Or do we have to break that out into new campaigns? So what we might do is say, okay, we need to create 3 new campaigns now. So we go 3 new campaigns and then with $20, $25. So now we've just taken this huge goal here and we've broken it down into very simple steps that we can take, that we have control over to actually get there. So we know now that if we want to go from 80k to 100k per month, all we have to do is create 3 campaigns here and make sure that these 3 campaigns spend that every single day, and we do that within our ACOS limit of 10%. So that's how you take a goal and you reverse engineer it so that you have clear inputs or clear actions that you can take to actually get to that goal. We know that this is realistic. We've reverse engineered the numbers and it's not outside of the scope of our abilities to do. We just need to create 3 campaigns. Very simple. So that's it for the video. Now, just to quickly summarize, there are 3 common traits that I've observed over the top 1% of sellers and advertisers. The first is they make sure they track the data. The second is they are super consistent with everything that they do. And then the third and final is they have a clear strategy. So that's everything for the video. I hope you took some value from it. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to leave a comment below. If you like videos in this style, let me know. And if you'd like to learn more about what we do to help sellers sell more products on Amazon, just click the link below.